2 years ago, Tim Cook stood on stage and put ChatGPT inside your iPhone. Handshake, big smile, new era.
The pioneer and market leader, ChatGPT from OpenAI, powered by GPT-4o.
This month, Apple's lawyers called that same partner a thief. Not a competitor, not a rival, a thief. At every level is the actual language in the filing.
Apple is suing OpenAI for trade secret theft.
And while the lawyers were writing that filing, two billionaires were calling each other a scammer on X. So today, how a partnership curdled into a lawsuit, and why the loudest reaction to it came from a guy who isn't even part of the case.
So this rivalry between two of the biggest CEOs in tech.
I'm Alex.
I'm Sarah. Welcome to The Exchange Show.
So let's set the table. 2024, Apple and OpenAI announce a partnership. ChatGPT gets built into Siri and Apple's writing tools. It's framed as Apple finally getting serious about AI without having to build its own frontier model from scratch.
First, we build support into Siri, so Siri can tap into ChatGPT's expertise when it might be helpful for you.
Which, if you know Apple, is already unusual. Apple doesn't outsource the crown jewels. But by last year, OpenAI wasn't just a software partner anymore. It bought Jony Ive's design studio, I/O Products, for $6.4 billion and started building its own hardware.
OpenAI has now agreed to buy Jony Ive's AI startup. It's called I/O Products. It's a roughly $6.4 billion deal. Ives is legendary in Silicon Valley. He's best known for designing the iPhone, the Mac, iPod, and iPad, as well as Apple Watch.
Right, and that's the pivot point. The moment OpenAI said, we're not just powering your assistant, we're gonna build a device, Apple's competitor radar had to go off. You don't hand your most sensitive technology partner the blueprint for your business and then watch them announce they're entering your business.
And this is where it stops being a boardroom disagreement and starts being a courtroom filing.
On July 10th, Apple sued OpenAI in federal court in Northern California. Trade secret theft. And the specific allegations are honestly kind of wild.
Suing OpenAI for trade secret theft. Apple saying that OpenAI encouraged its employees to share information, components, drawings, and other materials related to upcoming products to develop.
Two names matter here. First, Tang Tan, a former Apple vice president who's now OpenAI's chief hardware officer and who co-founded that I/O Products hardware unit. Apple's complaint alleges he directed Apple employees who were interviewing at OpenAI to actually bring physical parts, batteries, logic boards, into their interviews for what the filing calls show and tell.
Tang Tan, a 24-year Apple veteran and former vice president of product design for iPhone and Apple Watch, the man now running OpenAI's entire hardware division. Apple alleges that during OpenAI job interviews, Tan used confidential Apple project code names to probe candidates about unannounced products. Even worse, Tan allegedly instructed Apple candidates to bring highly sensitive physical device components like circuit boards and batteries to their interviews for illicit show and tell sessions.
Which, if true, means the interview process itself became the leak.
The second name is Chang Liu,
A former senior Apple electrical engineer. Apple alleges he kept his Apple-issued laptop after leaving, found a bug that let him back into Apple's internal cloud storage, and downloaded confidential files while he was already working on hardware for OpenAI.
Now let's decode the allegations, starting with Chang Liu. Apple says when Liu left for OpenAI in January this year, he simply never returned his Apple-issued laptop and ignored his exit interview. Then, according to the lawsuit, while working at OpenAI, Liu used a former colleague's Apple laptop and discovered a rare, previously unknown authentication bug that gave him access to Apple's internal network folders. Over several weeks, he allegedly downloaded dozens of confidential files, unreleased product details, engineering presentations, and technical specifications.
And there's a message quoted in the filing where Liu allegedly told a former colleague he'd found the access and thought it was funny.
That detail is doing a lot of work for Apple's case. It's not we suspect, it's we have receipts.
Apple's asking for damages, an injunction, and a court order forcing OpenAI to stop using whatever it took.
Apple says in its filing that in February it contacted OpenAI asking them to stop this practice, asking them to no longer take information from former Apple employees as well as employees interviewing, but OpenAI did not respond to them.
OpenAI's public response has been a flat denial. A spokesperson said the company has no interest in other companies' trade secrets and remains focused on its own technology.
What do you make of that? How should we think about this lawsuit and any impact on OpenAI's hardware ambitions?
Well, look, just unequivocally, we have no interest in other companies' trade secrets.
Here's the timing question, though. Apple almost never sues, so why now?
2 reasons, and they compound.
1, OpenAI is getting close to actually shipping a consumer device. Reporting suggests prototypes exist, so this isn't theoretical competition anymore. It's a launch window Apple can still disrupt through discovery and injunctions before a product hits shelves.
And 2, OpenAI just won a big legal fight. 2 months before Apple's suit, a federal jury sided with OpenAI against Elon Musk, who'd argued Altman and the company abandoned their nonprofit mission. Musk lost, said he'd appeal, but OpenAI walked out of that case looking legally untouchable.
So Apple's lawsuit lands right as OpenAI is flush with confidence, deep into hardware. And this is the part that matters for markets.
Reportedly preparing an IPO that could value the company north of $1 trillion.
Which means this isn't just who owns a battery design.
It's a company that just went from Apple's AI supplier to Apple's most credible hardware rival, filing to go public, while getting accused in federal court of building that hardware business on stolen homework.
And this is where it gets almost absurd, because the loudest person reacting to a lawsuit he's not even part of is Elon Musk.
This is personal, guys, between these CEOs. It does also highlight some very fierce competition right now between these companies for AI models. Both released the newest versions of their technology last week. And on that topic, Altman saying the benchmarks suggest they do have the best model in the world right now, but the most reliable way to tell that is that Elon is obsessed with me again.
Within hours of Apple's filing, Musk was on X reviving his old nickname for Altman, Scam Altman, and mocking OpenAI's coordinated hiring campaign as essentially exactly the kind of scheme he's accused Altman of running since 2015, when the two of them co-founded OpenAI together.
Musk saw his opening there, chimed in with a nickname he has used before, Scam Altman. He said he might love scamming more than any human alive. That got Altman's attention. He then responded, "Homeboy, you're the one selling public market investors on short-term space data centers." These two, if you can believe it, were friends at one point. They were co-founders of OpenAI.
Musk's version of the origin story has always been, I helped start this as a nonprofit, and Altman turned it into something else for his own benefit. He lost that argument in front of a jury in May. This lawsuit gives him a new stage to make the same case in public, even though he has zero legal standing in it.
Today it was Sam Altman's turn to take the stand, the high-profile AI trial pitting the OpenAI CEO against Elon Musk. Altman is defending the companies against Musk's allegations that OpenAI betrayed its founding mission by becoming a for-profit entity.
Altman didn't stay quiet either. He pushed back at Musk over SpaceX's pitch for orbital data centers, framing it as a company selling investors on a big, distant idea, while Musk publicly obsesses over OpenAI.
That got Altman's attention. He then responded, "Homeboy, you're the one selling public market investors on short-term space data centers."
Altman even used a new model release to make the point, essentially saying the surest sign his product is winning is that Musk can't stop talking about him.
And markets noticed. Apple stock barely moved, down a fraction of a percent. But SpaceX, which just went public, dropped several percent on the week. When two men worth a combined few $100 billion start trading insults, investors read it as a signal, whether or not it actually is one.
Strip away the billionaire theater for a second, though. There's a real cost here for the people actually named in the filing.
Tang Tan and Chung Liu are individual defendants, not just OpenAI, the company. Their careers, their reputations, potentially their finances are now tied to a federal trade secret case with their names attached publicly.
And there's a bigger, quieter story underneath. Talent has been flowing from Apple to OpenAI for a while now because OpenAI can offer equity and speed that a company Apple's size can't always match. This lawsuit is Apple's way of putting a very public, very expensive speed bump in that pipeline.
Which is also, by the way, a message to every other Apple employee currently taking a call from a recruiter. This is what happens if it goes wrong.
So where does this actually leave things? Apple's case is filed. Discovery hasn't really started. OpenAI is denying everything and pushing toward its IPO regardless. And Musk and Altman are still sniping at each other on a platform Musk happens to own.
And there's a layer most people miss. Apple itself just went through a leadership change. Tim Cook, who built the original OpenAI partnership, stepped down as CEO this spring. John Ternus is now running the company that's suing Apple's own AI partner.
Tim Cook is leaving his post as CEO of Apple, and starting in September, he will be the executive chairman of Apple's board of directors. The next CEO will be John Ternus. He's currently Apple's senior vice president of hardware engineering.
So the executive who negotiated the deal isn't the one now dismantling it in court.
Two sides. Apple says its most sensitive technology was stolen from the inside. OpenAI says there's nothing to see here.
One truth we can say for certain. The partnership that put ChatGPT on your iPhone just became a federal case.
And the two most famous men in AI are still arguing about who actually stole what from whom first.
That's The Exchange Show. See you next time.